this is where it gets scary. You know, from the beginning of Advent until now, we have been praying through every Sunday as we gather the activity of God in the world. Most of his activity sparked by our stupidity, disobedience, and sin. Remember Advent, we talked about the prophets and all the things that God did preparing for the Messiah. And then at Christmas and the Epiphany time, we talked about the coming of God among us in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. Then we did a little bit more reviewing of ancient history in Lent by hearing about the genesis of the world, the waywardness of God's chosen people, all that down through the days up until the Passion of Jesus, when we relived, in a certain sense, the death and resurrection of the Lord, and kept meditating on his victory over sin and death, even to this day, which is the end of the Easter season. And if we're not careful, we can look upon that praying through of history as sort of a drama, a play. Because none of us existed when any of that took place. In a sense, it's ancient history, isn't it? But then we come to today, and that's where I say it gets scary. It's like an opera or a play that you're viewing, and then all of a sudden the producer has decided to invite the audience up on the stage to be part of the event. And you can go up on the stage or you can stay in your seat. And Pentecost is when that invitation is made real. This is where we enter his salvation history, because all that went before, all that preparation, all that life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is an ongoing event. It's not an ancient play. It's an ongoing event, and at this time and this place, we are the participants. Because as Paul said, the Spirit of this Jesus has been poured into us, and we are living the life of Christ in our own day, and Christ is living his life through us in this time and place. And that's why this is sort of frightening, because we have the option of staying in our seats or joining the event. When Jesus gave us the Spirit, the church the Spirit, the disciples the Spirit, it was to empower us to keep this movement of God in history going. This reign of God which Jesus established in his time, and of which we are now the participants and the furtherers of. In other words, the reign of God, theoretically at least, could die out for lack of participation. It won't, because God always gets his way. But we need to do our part, not only for the sake of the world, but for our own sake, to join in God's work among us, even though we don't always comprehend it or understand it. So Pentecost brings us to a fulfillment, but it also brings us to a commencement, a new beginning. I once saw a sign on a church, you know, those terrible signs they put outside of churches anymore. Some of them are quite good, some of them are quite bad. But this one really struck home to me. But the question on the sign was, are you a fan of Jesus or a follower? Are you going to stay in the bleachers or are you going to get out on the field? And that's the call of Pentecost.